Bernardin de Saint-Pierre was to address his reply, if he should honor the writer with a few words, to the citizen Louis Bonaparte, poste restant Toulon. The author of Paul and Virginia replied to the sensitive lad in so kindly a manner that from the above letter a strong friendship was begun, which lasted through the good and evil fortunes, alike in many points, as the actors were alike in many essentials of character, of prince and author. The boy's whose heart was penetrated with the woes of Paul and Virginia became the shy man who kept in the shady walks of Malmaison while the games were going forward, and remained overcharged with sensitiveness to the end of his days. Louis Bonaparte, who was born at Ajaccio on September 2nd, 1778, and was consequently 9 years younger than Napoleon I, was the brother whom Napoleon took under his especial care, treating him as his son and pupil. Between the master and the pupil there were natural antagonisms that could never be reconciled, and which circumstances constantly tended to embitter. Louis's letter to Bernardin de Saint-Pierre will give an idea of the lad whom Napoleon was impatient to hurry off to school in the camp and the guard-room. This boy, tender-hearted, romantic, averse to show and pomp, hating war, and given to the shady paths and peaceful scenes of a retired country life, was led off in his teens to artillery practice. During one of his visits to Marseille, where his mother was living, when the siege of Toulon was in progress, Napoleon persuaded her to send Louis to the military school at Chalon. He was but 14 years of age when he went forth, armed with a passport signed by the representatives of the people, to begin his military studies. His first experience was of the terrors of revolution. He had to make his journey through Lyon, then in the full tide of revolutionary turmoil, to Chalon, encountering many dangers by the road. And when he arrived, he found that the school had been dissolved. He made the best of his way home, only to set forth again with Napoleon to learn war at the cannon's mouth. And so he learned it thoroughly. In the merry days of Malmaison, when blind man's buff was not too frolicsome a pastime for the host and guests, this young man stood apart, not churlishly, but as one who could find no pleasure in a romp upon the grass. He was a stout, brave, unambitious soldier. His famous brother knew and loved him well, and had often honored him with the post of danger in a tough fight. In the army, said the emperor at St. Helena, his courage was brilliant, but by fits, and he remained indifferent to the praises which his valor provoked. He was a strict disciplinarian without thinking of his own personal safety. At the passage of the Po, he placed himself at the head of the attacking columns. At Pizzighettone, he was the first in the breach. At the assault of Pavia, he was on horseback at the head of the sappers and grenadiers, who were ordered to destroy the gates with their hatchets. In a shower of bullets, he was on horseback because he thought it was his duty to be mounted in order to make a better reconnaissance of the city as soon as the grenadiers should burst into the streets. The sight of the sacking of this city, celebrated for its university, made a deep impression on him, and he became still more taciturn. He was bookish man, not one to have a hand contentedly in the sacking of a seat of learning. His mind remained throughout of a sentimental cast, yet wedded to classic forms. He would rather talk to Bernardin de Saint-Pierre or one of the savants in the Malmaison circle and gossip with his companions in arms, or even catch a glance of the blue eyes of Mademoiselle Hortense de Beauharnais. He was the antithesis of the mercurial Jerome, of a manly, upright nature. He possibly regretted the events which had drawn his family from their birthplace. Queen Hortense always charged him with a dislike of women, but his point of disagreement was that they, according to him, loved show. Elles cherchent l'éclat, he would say, et le bonheur n'en a point. They look for show, and happiness isn't there. Louis Napoleon was, of all the figures which the historian of the empire should love to dwell upon, among the worthiest. Standing in the shade, watching the weekly frolics at Malmaison, carefully apart from Josephine, who had ardently pressed him to become her son-in-law. He was then no misanthrope. He had fought in the field with the same patient, quiet sense of duty which he had been left to follow his own inclinations, would have trimmed in some unregarded place, the lamp of the student. His brother was both father and hero to him. Louis loved Napoleon with an ardor that neither ill treatment or separation could abate, with a constancy that was proof against misfortune and death. He served him while honor permitted, the thorough forgetfulness of self, and with a power and an intellect equal to his zeal. The emperor, who was a grudging panegyrist of his brother, wrote to Joseph Bonaparte in 1795 that he was much pleased with Louis. He's a good fellow, but one also in my style, zeal, esprit, good health, talent, punctual habits, kindness. He unites them all. I feel the loss of him acutely. He was a great use to me. No man would become more active, more skillful, more engaging. He did all he liked in Paris. Since Louis is no longer with me, I can set about only leading affairs. That Napoleon tried the sensitive qualities of his brother's nature to his great injury is only too certain. At no time of his life had the consul been a boy, and in no part of his career does he appear to have been swayed by the impulse of his heart. He said to de Bourrienne, so de Bourrienne records, in the heyday of his life, that he loved nobody. I do not even love my brothers, perhaps Joseph a little, and Duroc because he's stern. I really believe the fellow never shed a tear. The sternness which Napoleon admired in the fellow who never shed a tear, he himself showed when dealing with his brothers. He made them ample partakers of his glory, but he held them firmly within the lines of his general design. They were so many caryatids to the temple of his fame. 2 of them, however, he could not subdue to his will. Lucy kept proudly apart from him throughout, and refused a crown of Naples, saying he would have no kingdom of which he was not king. But it was only when Louis had ceased to be a boy and could walk with a certain step of man that he refused to stand always at attention to the imperial word of command. At St. Helena, Napoleon expressed his fear that he had done his good brother Louis wrong, and then he forgave him the libel he published in his own justification. He had refused to see that his brother's heart was unlike his own. Napoleon could bend all his being to his own ambition. Louis was stone deaf to the trump of glory, was blind to the glittering pleasures of a court, and with a reed and book could have lived the life of a shepherd. Of some such pastoral life he had dreamed, with his first love, Sophie or Emily, for his shepherdess. Napoleon admitted that he was even a brilliant soldier, always at the post of duty and of danger. He was grave and romantic by nature, but fiery by culture. He would head the fight with ardor, but his phlegm was impenetrable when he was offered the laurel. Careless of the glories of the field, he was also unfortunate in his home. While he was in Paris just before the Egyptian expedition, his evil star, according to Napoleon, drew him into the company of the daughter of the Marquis de Beauharnais. The young lady in question was Emily de Beauharnais, Hortense's cousin and schoolfellow. Louis, it is said, fell in love with this Emily Eperdumont. According to Napoleon, in an evil hour he told his love, the intimate friend of the family, Casabianca. This old Republican ally took alarm at the probable consequences of an alliance of a Bonaparte with the daughter of an emigre, and disclosed the secret to Napoleon. It is certain, said Napoleon, reviewing his own conduct from the calm distance of St. Helena, that this marriage would have shocked public opinion and have given rise to the attacks of party men who were already watching me with alarm. I do not think it possible to teach reason on the subject to a young man of 20. So I thought the better course would be to feign entire ignorance of the matter and to send him away on a military mission. The next day, a post-chaise put the 100 leagues which separate Lyon from Paris between the lovers. But in spite of this precaution, neither absence nor the Egyptian campaign, nor even the marriage of Mademoiselle de Beauharnais with Monsieur de Lavalette during the absence in 1796 could stay the ravages of this first love, which exercised a fatal influence on Louis's future. This is the commonly received version of Louis's first attachment, and possibly it is that in which Napoleon believed. In a letter 20 pages long, Louis wrote the history of his life to his future wife a few days before their marriage. In this confession, he declares that he had passionately loved a young person named Sophie, but he makes no mention of Emily de Beauharnais. Emily was in love with Louis and was sent to Madame Campion's school after her marriage, possibly to be cured of her passion for Louis and her hatred of Monsieur de Lavalette, her husband. Queen Hortense believed that Emily was mistaken in her idea that Louis continued to love her, and she shows good cause for the suspicion, for when Madame de Lavalette applied to the first consul to obtain a divorce in order that she might marry his brother, and he referred to Louis for his pleasure, the latter replied that, were she free, he would not marry her. The smallpox had so altered her